Now to the local trial that has made national headlines.
After 3 weeks of testimony, polo mogul John Goodman is behind bars tonight. Goodman taken into custody this afternoon. This is his jail booking photo, just released to the media within the past hour. Goodman was found guilty of DUI manslaughter and vehicular homicide in the death of 23-year-old Scott Wilson in February of 2010.
The charges included one count of DUI manslaughter and failure to render aid. The second count, Goodman found guilty on vehicular homicide. News Channel 5's Jay Cashmere is leading our team coverage. He's live from outside the Palm Beach County Courthouse with more on today's verdict. Jay?
Yeah, Kelly and Michael, that verdict handed down today about 1:30, sending really a pulse of emotion through the courtroom and out into the community as millions of people across the country have watched all 3 weeks of this trial culminate in one moment today. It was a powerful moment when that jury came back. 5 men, 1 woman handing down a guilty verdict. As you mentioned, John Goodman convicted of DUI manslaughter, failure to render aid, and vehicular homicide, failure to render aid. He was quickly taken into custody. He was denied bail and has currently been processed at the Palm Beach County Jail. He will await a sentencing hearing on April 30th at 1:30 in the courtroom behind me. I want to welcome in my colleague Alex Sands. He has been following this trial alongside with us for the past 3 weeks. He has more on all of the aftermath of today's guilty verdict. Alex?
This was, as you know, Jay, for Scott Wilson's family, a day more than 2 years in the making. Prosecutor Alan Roberts was quick to point out that John Goodman wasn't a bad person, just a person who made a bad choice 2 years ago. And that was a point fellow prosecutor Sherry Collins agreed with. Take a listen.
Well, clearly this case wasn't about money. This case wasn't about David versus Goliath. This case was about the facts. And the facts that occurred on that night that were seen by the investigators, the statements that he made that night, just pointed to only one verdict. And we were very thankful that the jury was able to see through what was trying to be thrown up as reasonable doubt and to see the evidence for what it was.
Just before we spoke with prosecutors, we caught up with Roy Black, who was the defense attorney in this case, known across South Florida for so many years for taking on so many high-profile cases, not one for ever shying away from the cameras. This time was different.
Be very short. I really don't have any comment, and other than that, I have nothing else to say.
No feelings about
the... What did you feel the jury missed?
We have to move. We can't stay here.
Roy, what did you say to your client? Roy, are you going to...
And so it is on to the sentencing phase now, Jay. John Goodman facing 30 years in prison. That sentencing now scheduled for April 30th.
Alex Sands continuing our live coverage from the Palm Beach County Courthouse. Alex, thank you very much. Well, you heard some reaction from Roy Black there moments after we heard from him. He and his team issued this statement, Roy Black stating that it is our belief that multiple errors were committed during and before the trial that in effect denied our client's ability to get a fair trial. He added, we intend to file an appeal so that our client can receive the just and fair proceeding to which he is entitled by law. I want to welcome in now my colleague Dan Corcoran. He has been following this trial, this big day, all the developments today when this guilty verdict was handed down. We've talked about the raw emotion for Scott Wilson's family having to relive this tragedy, not only through the past 3 weeks, but today, a big day for them and an emotional one as well, Dan.
Well, of course, the spotlight through this whole trial has been on John Goodman himself, but of course the family of Scott Wilson. They've been sitting in that courtroom every single step of the way, right up through the reading of that verdict. Moments after the verdict, and this mother finally feels some relief.
Justice has been served.
Justice served, says Lily Wilson, mother of 23-year-old Scott Wilson, who's been watching every moment of the John Goodman trial.
I'm always going to miss my son. He was the most wonderful. I will always cherish his memories.
Wilson's mother and also Wilson's father, Bill, pleased with the prosecution's efforts with the guilty verdict, thinking, of course, about Scott. Attorney Scott Smith, on behalf of Scott Wilson's father, outside the courtroom.
Respect that, although this was a high-profile trial that was about John Goodman and whether or not he was guilty, Mr. Wilson and Lily lost their son, and we hope that Scott's memory is not forgotten.
Now, after more than 2 years, mother and father of Scott Wilson finally ready to move forward without ever forgetting what they've been through.
Coming from me and the rest of the family and his friends, it's time for the healing process to begin.
Jay, both Mr. and Mrs. Wilson say they want to get away from the glare of this trial, get away from the spotlight, and just spend some time with their families as they move forward to start that healing process.
Dan Corcoran continuing our live coverage. Dan, thank you very much. That wraps up our coverage out here. Again, the next major hurdle in this case will be April 30th when John Goodman goes before Judge Colbath right behind me at the Palm Beach County Courthouse for his sentencing hearing. He faces a maximum of 30 years behind bars. For our entire team out here over the past 3 weeks, I'm Jay Cashmere. We'll toss it back to the studio.